What if a fence could change an entire continent? What if a structure built to keep animals out ended up reshaping the land, the economy, and the balance of nature itself? In the heart of Australia, this question became reality. Stretching nearly 5,600 kilometers, the dingo fence is the longest fence in the world, longer than the Great Wall of China, longer than the distance from London to New York. It slices across Australia's vast interior, dividing ecosystems, communities, and even time itself. But its story didn't begin with dingoes. It began with rabbits. In 1859, a British settler named Thomas Austin released 24 European rabbits for sport hunting. He couldn't have imagined the chaos he was unleashing. By 1880, rabbits had spread more than 60 kilometers per year, devouring fields, crops, and entire landscapes. They stripped the soil bare and left farmers desperate. By the late 1800s, Western Australia launched a bold idea: build a fence to stop the rabbits. The first barrier, 120 kilometers long, rose in 1897. Made of galvanized mesh and buried deep into the earth, it was patrolled by men on camelback under scorching 45 degrees Celsius heat. The work was brutal. Food was scarce. Yet mile by mile, the fence grew. Though rabbits still slipped through, the barrier slowed their advance and kept out wild pigs and dogs, allowing wheat to grow again. Over time, this fence became more than wood and wire. It became part of Australia's identity, a line drawn between survival and collapse. By 1905, it had become vital to the nation's wool industry. Queensland was divided into 9 districts, each responsible for maintenance. Even when biological solutions appeared, like the introduction of the myxomatosis virus in the 1950s, which wiped out 90% of the rabbit population, the fence stayed. The wool boards refused to let it go. It had become a symbol of protection, and once a structure becomes part of an economy, removing it is harder than building it. But rabbits weren't the only invaders. Dingoes, Australia's wild dogs, had become an even greater threat. They hunted sheep relentlessly, killing up to 10% of livestock every year in the wool-producing regions. To farmers, the solution was clear: if fences could stop rabbits, perhaps they could stop dingoes too. In 1914, surveyors began their work in Queensland, hammering wooden stakes into unforgiving ground. They ignored rivers, cliffs, and deserts. The goal was simple: build a barrier that no predator could cross. Over the next 4 decades, men labored beneath the brutal sun, surrounded by isolation and endless sand. By 1958, the dingo fence stretched over 5,600 kilometers, tall enough to deter wild dogs, long enough to encircle Spain twice. It was built from barbed wire, ring-lock mesh, and sweat. Workers faced broken machinery, sandstorms, and constant exhaustion. They were paid by the mile, and many quit before finishing their section. Those who stayed learned to survive the desert itself, sleeping under trucks, stacking rocks for shelter, and fighting heat that could kill a man by noon. And yet, they succeeded. The fence stood, a steel scar running across the continent. For decades, it did its job. Dingoes stayed north, sheep stayed south, and Australia's wool industry flourished. But nothing in nature comes without a cost. The moment a predator is removed from an ecosystem, balance begins to shift. On the western side of the dingo fence, where wild dogs still roamed, kangaroo populations remained stable. But on the eastern side, free from predators, the kangaroo population exploded. They multiplied beyond control, consuming vegetation faster than it could regrow. The land began to die again. Only this time it wasn't rabbits, it was too much of everything else. The ground turned to dust. The air grew hotter. Satellite images revealed a stark difference: west of the fence, green landscapes; east of it, a spreading desert. Where dingoes roamed, plants thrived. Where they were gone, life withered. Australia had learned a hard truth: sometimes protection comes at a higher cost than danger. Scientists began to debate: should the fence remain, or should it fall? Some argued for tearing down parts of it to restore natural balance, letting dingoes control kangaroo populations once more. Others warned that doing so could devastate sheep farming and cost millions. The argument was no longer about animals, it was about identity, economy, and the delicate line between nature and necessity. As the decades passed, the fence aged. Sunlight corroded steel. Sand eroded the base. Moisture seeped into every joint, rusting the mesh. By 2024, experts warned that over 1,000 kilometers of the fence were on the verge of collapse. To save it, the government launched a $25 million reconstruction project. Helicopters airlifted new materials to remote zones, replacing wood with recycled composite poles made from old milk bottles, stronger, lighter, and resistant to termites and corrosion. The challenge wasn't just time, it was nature itself. Floods tore down sections of wire. Sandstorms buried posts. In 2023, a single storm created a 32-kilometer gap in one night. Contractors worked day and night to patch it, but new holes opened elsewhere. The fence was fighting a losing battle against the very landscape it was meant to control. And as if the desert weren't enough, another enemy emerged: camels. Descendants of Afghan camels brought to Australia more than a century ago, they now roamed wild in the outback. During droughts, herds of thirsty camels charged the fence like battering rams, bending steel stakes and ripping through mesh. One adult camel could destroy 20 posts in a single night. Technology came to the rescue. Drones equipped with infrared cameras patrolled at dawn, spotting breaches before they spread. Sensors hidden in the wire sent automatic alerts to rangers miles away. Some fences were even upgraded with fiber optics that could detect vibrations, signaling the exact location of damage. Still, maintaining the dingo fence remained one of the toughest jobs in the world. Patrolmen, known as doggers, spent weeks alone in the desert, surviving on canned food, repairing wire under relentless heat. The pay was decent, but the solitude broke many of them. The mental toll was as heavy as the physical one. By 2024, governments and landowners began offering higher salaries to those willing to guard vulnerable stretches of fence. Despite the hardship, many took pride in the work. They weren't just maintaining metal, they were defending a century-old symbol of human perseverance against nature's chaos. Yet, behind every hammer strike and patch of wire, one question lingered: what has Australia truly gained, and what has it lost, by drawing a line through the heart of its wilderness? Australia's fences are more than wire and steel. They are lines drawn between survival and surrender, between order and the wild. But over the years, these lines have multiplied. Across the country, thousands of kilometers of new barriers have been built, not just to block dingoes or rabbits, but to protect fragile ecosystems from other invasive species. In the Northern Territory, a different kind of fence rose from the dust. Completed in 2018, the 44-kilometer New Haven cat fence was designed to keep out feral cats, one of Australia's most destructive predators. These cats, descendants of pets brought by settlers, have wiped out countless native species, from small marsupials to rare birds. The New Haven fence has an outward curved top edge that even the most agile feline cannot climb. Inside, the land has transformed. Native creatures like bilbies and central rock rats have returned to places where they had vanished for decades. Technology guards these new sanctuaries. RFID sensors track every vehicle entering the area. Motion detectors trigger alarms when an unauthorized movement is detected. In case of a breach, automated lures broadcast cat calls that draw invaders into traps coated with a harmless yet lethal chemical, one that targets only feral cats and leaves native wildlife unharmed. It sounds like science fiction, But in Australia, this is conservation. Each fence is a battlefield in the nation's war against ecological imbalance. Yet even these victories come at a price. Every wall, no matter how well-intentioned, divides as much as it protects. In Queensland, a new type of barrier was built, one not for predators, but for amphibians. Cane toads, introduced in the 1930s to control beetles, had become a plague. Researchers stretched shade cloth fences around cattle dams, creating 60-centimeter barriers that stopped toads from reaching the water. The results were astonishing. Populations dropped by 95% after just one dry season. Sometimes, the simplest solutions can do what technology cannot. Across the desert, the men and women who maintain these fences live lives few outsiders could endure. They wake before sunrise, drive hundreds of kilometers through dust and silence, and repair wire in the heat of the day. They are the unseen guardians of the fence, a handful of rangers standing between order and collapse. For some, it's a calling, for others, a burden. The isolation, the endless horizon, the feeling of being forgotten by the world, it wears down even the toughest spirits. One mistake, a gate left open, a latch unfastened, can cost a farmer thousands of dollars in livestock. Fines are steep, and the law is strict. Along the fence, warning signs read, "No dogs." No excuses. The message is clear, the line must hold. But not all fences are built by farmers or governments. Some are built by scientists, fences meant not to divide but to understand. Near the dingo fence, the Australian Centre for Experimental Taphonomic Research studies what happens to the human body in extreme environments. More than 70 donated remains lie exposed beneath the open sky, helping forensic experts learn how decay unfolds in the desert's merciless heat. It's grim, but vital work, knowledge born from stillness and time. Indigenous ranger teams have joined this effort, blending ancient knowledge with modern tools. They use drones equipped with 4K cameras to scan for breaches, combining traditional tracking skills with digital precision. This collaboration has not only strengthened the fences but also healed relationships with the land itself. Old wisdom and new science, working side by side. Still, for all its ingenuity, Australia's fence network remains controversial. Around the world, similar barriers have caused unintended harm. In Botswana, veterinary fences built across the Kalahari Desert to stop disease outbreaks led to mass deaths of migrating wildlife. In Canada, studies show that there are now more wire fences than paved roads in Alberta, trapping pronghorn antelope and interrupting migration routes. In Europe, fences built to stop African swine fever have stranded deer and lynx, fracturing entire habitats. Australia has learned from these mistakes. Daily monitoring, drone patrols, and smart sensors now allow for balance, a system not just of defense, but of adaptation. The fences are evolving, becoming part of a larger conversation about coexistence. And now, as climate change brings harsher storms and longer droughts, Australia faces a new dilemma. Should the dingo fence remain where it is? In 2025, scientists proposed shifting it 50 kilometers north to let dingoes reclaim parts of the grasslands, while protecting sheep with guardian dogs and new lambing technologies. The pilot tests were stunning. In one area near Guanaherring, just 1 kilometer of fence was removed, and within months, plants began to return. Lizards multiplied. The soil softened. Life began to heal itself. But not everyone agreed. Critics warned that opening the line could bring new waves of livestock losses. A government report suggested that moving the fence could save $80 million in maintenance, but cost $65 million in damages. The debate continues, a reflection of Australia's eternal struggle between progress and preservation. Meanwhile, new technologies offer hope. Fiber optic cables now run beneath some sections, detecting motion and stress in real time. Artificial intelligence analyses data from drones, predicting weak points before they break. Smart systems, combining solar power and machine learning, could one day replace the manual patrols that once defined the fence's legacy.